Hi, everybody. Looks like a full room today. I'm just going to kick off this press conference by making sure we all understand that what we care about most are the Pennsylvanians. We are talking about Pennsylvania first. We cannot burden those workers who go to work every day and work an 8-hour shift and then are waiting for their overtime. We have to be very careful on how we treat them. And again, this is the fourth time. This is our fourth budget from the governor that spends way too much. A lot more than what we are bringing in revenue. We plan to be as fiscally responsible to the people of Pennsylvania that we are able to be. One thing I think is important to all of us that will definitely still be here in 2028 is, the governor brought up the housing issue and bonding in 2028 when he plans on being gone. He plans on being somewhere else on another office. That is if he wins this year. And he leaves that burden for all of us. Putting all of that money into a bond. We, again, will be left holding the bag. And that just means that the people of Pennsylvania are left holding the bag. That's all I'm going to say right now. I'm going to bring up my friend, Senator Joe Pittman.
Thank you. Thank you, Pro Tem. Good afternoon. Appreciate everybody being here. Beyond stating the obvious, what the President Pro Tem said, the governor simply wants to spend too much money in this budget. Period, full stop. But much of what I heard in his remarks today reminded me of two things. Imitation is the best form of flattery, and success has 1,000 fathers. And here's the reality. So much of what we heard today sounded an awful lot like the agenda that the Senate and House Republicans have advocated for years. Slicing through bureaucracy, through red tape, permitting reform, cutting taxes, 7 tax cuts would not have been possible without the Senate and Republican House working together to achieve those tax cuts. Energy, welcome to the party. We've been talking about energy and the need to have a reliable energy supply for years. And the list goes on and on. Public safety, reduced crime rates. All of those things are initiatives that we have pursued and continue to pursue and will pursue in the budget ahead. So we welcome his embracing of our priorities in so many ways. And what I mean by success having 1,000 fathers, let's be very clear. Much of the successes that he touted today would not have been possible without our initiative. Speeches are great, applause lines are wonderful, but at the end of the day, speeches and applause lines cannot become law. And it takes us as a General Assembly leading the way to effectuate so much of what the governor has claimed achievement on over the last 3 years and wants to achieve in his fourth budget ahead. And so as the weeks and months unfold, we're going to continue to engage in a dialogue. I'm glad the governor took my advice and is engaging much sooner in the process. As he said, we're going to have a conversation tomorrow initially about the budget. That's what I had suggested we do months ago, and I'm glad that he is following up on that suggestion. So at the end of the day, we're going to go through a very complicated and difficult process again, but we're committed to working together to make sure, as the Pro Tem said, the people of Pennsylvania and their needs are addressed in the budget that's in front of us. But make no mistake, and our Appropriations Chairman will talk a lot about this, there's a lot of hard work and a lot of hard decisions to be made in the years ahead in terms of our fiscal stability and what the people of Pennsylvania may inherit long after the governor is no longer in his chair. And that's what we have to be focused on, is the long-term view of the viability of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. But it's all about economic development. It's all about demographics, changing our demographic tide, much of what the governor had said, and thanks to our leadership, he's been able to claim credit for some of that, which is fine because, as we said, success does have 1,000 fathers. And at the end of the day, we're a critical piece to achieving any of that success. Now I'm going to turn it over to our Appropriations Chair, Senator Scott Martin.
Thank you, Leader. Good afternoon, everybody. You know, I really don't want to be a broken record because, quite frankly, it feels like this is the fourth time I've stood before you and talked about the exact same thing. And the position that we have find ourselves in now is exactly where we'd said we'd be. Now, the one thing I'm grateful for with the people standing behind me is the fact that we probably would be talking about broad-based tax increases this year if we haven't done our part to try to tamper back some of his previous spending proposals. So it's no secret whatsoever what our structural deficit is. As much as I've heard leaders from the other side of the building in the other chamber who claim we have no structural deficit, we are spending about $4.5 billion more than we're taking in. And if you would take away some of the one-time sources of revenue that we shook the couch cushions for last year, trying to get lapsed fundings and interest from special accounts, we're probably talking about closer to $5 billion in terms of that deficit. To see that we have another proposal that increases spending by another $5.4 billion is mind-boggling to me. And the way they make their numbers work, this is no secret. You are going to hear it again in our hearings. They underestimate what their spending is going to be deliberately, and they overestimate what their revenues are going to be. They're going to pick revenue sources that are very controversial and have been long-time battlegrounds here that do not exist right now. And they're going to try to tell you that next year and the year after, we're only going to increase spending by about $400 million. Well, guess what? They said it about the same thing about this year. And he's asking for $2.6 billion. You know, we have worked our caucuses deliberately over the last 3 years to try to position this state to be as competitive to grow, to keep our young people here, to get them to invest here, and to be able to afford a quality of life here in Pennsylvania. Now, you did hear a lot of him talking about some of the things. When I heard him talking about pathways to good Pennsylvania jobs and easing the burden on our students, man, I leaned to Leader Pittman. I said to him, he's doing a lot of twisting and turning so he wouldn't have to talk about Grow PA, which was an initiative authored by myself, Leader Topper, that had 11,000 Pennsylvania young people want to stay here and commit to living in this state. Instead, he wanted to talk about the wonderful things government can do in terms of the State Board of Higher Education, as if that's going to make things more affordable for Pennsylvanians, which it would not. You also heard him talk about energy. I'm here to tell you, as much as he wanted to talk about his lightning plan, just like last year, he is not booking any of that programmatically or spending money related to tax credits in this year's budget. It's not there. You heard mentioned before about the bond that he wants to do. They're not even booking that to 28, 29. But probably the thing that concerns me the most is that every person in this room heard him reference multiple times our positive bond upgrades, our positive outlook, the money that it's saving us. You even heard him talk about changes with the federal government in terms of emergency management. What we all know is we're talking about the rainy day fund. So on one hand, he's sugar-potting everybody over here, talking about all the benefits of a rainy day fund, but on paper, in terms of his budget, he wants to take $4.6 billion out of that. Now, if anyone's ever done bond work before, let me tell you something. The moment we start draining that fund completely is the moment we're going to get bond downgrades, we're going to get a negative outlook, we're paying more for our debt, and all of a sudden we have nothing. And when we have nothing, then you were probably talking about one of the largest broad-based tax increases. I'm not going to say years down the road. I'm telling you next year, unless we get this under control. So as much as I respect Senator Pittman, and I'm not going to talk about Groundhog Day, I will say that this budget is rinse and repeat. And we're going to stand for the same things we've been fighting for along the way and try to deliver a budget that's fiscally responsible and keep this Commonwealth on a path to growth. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our good friend, Leader Jesse Topper.
Good afternoon. The governor at several points mentioned the growth of our economy. And we agree that it has been growing, mostly because of initiatives that we've been touting in terms of permitting reform. And we believe that escaping the specter of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative and that carbon tax will absolutely help energy development in Pennsylvania. We need to see that come in the next few months, and we believe that we will see that. But even with that rate of economic growth, it still doesn't match the spending. If we don't bring those in line, then we will continue to be outsized in how much we're spending versus how much we're bringing in. But these guys up here will talk about the numbers. I'm sure you'll hear from Chairman Struzzi and Chairman Martin during appropriation hearings and their committees about the numbers. But I think what you really saw today, and why it can be very difficult to govern in this divided state, is the fundamental disagreement over the role of government. The amount of times I heard today that government was going to intervene into the private sector, that government is what would create prosperity, that government is what would create jobs. When he said, now we have Reggie out of the way, we don't have an excuse to do anything, my first thought is, now that Reggie is out of the way, what we need to do is stand back and watch the private sector work and watch the private sector grow the jobs that will support this economy. But what you saw on display today was the fundamental disagreement over the role of government. We believe that if you want to put money back into people's pockets, if you want to make everything from groceries to electric bills more affordable, to higher education, what we need to do as government is far less. We need to get our footprint down. That is what we believe will make things more affordable for Pennsylvanians. And unfortunately, from what we heard today, that is exactly the opposite of what we're hearing from the administration. And it'll be up to us to bring those two diametrically opposed visions into focus so that we can get a product done. With that, I'd like to introduce, I believe, our final speaker, the Majority Whip, Senator Wayne Langerholt.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to say first that it's a pleasure to be part of this leadership team as we will continue to hold the line. It's a pleasure to be part in good company with fiscally responsible individuals that have consistently held the line. And I wonder where we would be if we weren't the ones that were reining back and holding. You hear the policies of tax cuts. Those are policies that are borne by members that are on this stage. And where would we be if we did not advance those policies? We would be in a whole different situation. And conversely, I will say, where would we be if we had not been into Reggie? You know, you hear the governor screaming from the heavens, it seems, saying that we need to do energy policy, when effectively our borders of our state were closed to any energy development since 2019. And where did that development go? Look next door to the state that he touted that he just beat, apparently, Ohio. Look how many power plants were built and are operational now in that state that could have been here, that could have been economic development. And also you hear the touting of the money, the millions of dollars that this governor saved for utility payers. I want to personally ask those that are watching this now, the taxpayer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the energy bill that you got, your electricity bill this month, the month before, or the prior month, did this governor save you money? I would beg to differ. I look forward to working with this leadership team, the hard work that is done by so many of the appropriations chairs in both bodies in holding the line and enacting fiscal common sense. Thank you. With that, I'll turn it back to Leader Pittman.
We'll be happy to entertain a couple questions. So, Stephen?
The Commonwealth structural deficit exists despite a pretty much near continuous role of Republicans in designing these budgets. Multiple people up here voted for every budget that you were saying got us to this place fiscally, so why should people trust that Republicans are going to be able to address the structural deficit?
Well, first of all, you have to look at what's been proposed over the last several years versus what has been enacted. And there's no question that everything that has been proposed by this governor and certainly the House Democrats, the spending would be infinitely more than what we're dealing with now. We've been very vocal about the fact that we continue to spend too much, but in this divided government, we only have so much capacity to deliver that particular message. But we're continuing to be creative and innovative. As we've said before, we are draining the couch cushions of the bureaucracy of every dollar we can find. And I assure you, in this budget, we're going to make those couch cushions as flat as a pancake. We're going to do everything we can to protect the taxpayer and make sure that the dollars that have already been allocated are wisely used.
Is tapping into the rainy day fund a red line this year for Senate Republicans?
Practically speaking, it's going to be a difficult task to not have any conversation about the rainy day fund. But here's the reality. This is February, and we have a long way to go in terms of revenue projections and revenue estimates. But we do believe before we have a rainy day fund type of conversation, we have to make sure we're, again, stretching every taxpayer dollar we can and bring the cost of government down as much as possible. There's quite a few things in his budget, such as the corrections line item, where we just closed 2 prisons, and yet he wants another $140 million of increased spending. We think that is wholly ridiculous, given what certain communities in this Commonwealth just went through.
The Democrats say 5 years from now, there'll still be $1 billion in the rainy day fund and reserves. How do you guys respond to that? And where you had mentioned Department of Corrections, are there other areas that you guys are looking to take the red line?
If they think that much is going to be there, they better hope that Republicans are still in control of the legislature, because that's the only way that'll happen. I think you can make the numbers say what you want them to say, and I think Senator Martin mentioned that, of how you can do the numbers gymnastics. But what we believe is we can look at the demographics and the way they're trending. This state is getting older. This state is losing young people in development to other states. It is our goal to turn that trend around. And to Steve's point earlier about what have we done in the budget, we believe that the policies that we have forced the governor's hand on is what will turn those demographics around. And it will take time, and it will take work, and we need to continue to do that. And if we don't see those demographics turn around, then you'll need a bucket to catch the tax increases that'll be coming.
That's okay, guys. How do you respond to Governor Shapiro's quote calling out of Senate Republicans over the stalling of the statute of limitations reform?
So let me start by saying that we all, every person in this room, feels for those victims. We have also, on the Senate side, passed a constitutional amendment 4 times. And, you know, we don't believe, we all want to help the victims. We just believe there are different paths to do it. We do not believe that statutorily is the way to go, because we have a remedies clause, and other states don't have a remedies clause. So it's easier for them. But I would say this to the governor. If he is sincere about victims, not only in the past, but more present, he should return the $1.1 million he got from Reid Hoffman, who is on the Epstein list. Further, I would guide you to a case in Williamsport that is in federal court right now. And it is about the Williamsport High School baseball event that happened. It is in federal court. It landed in the Attorney General's office. Well, Governor Shapiro was still Attorney General. We have all the documentation. We have the lead detective saying he can't prosecute because it's above his pay grade. So I would just guide you to that. We have a case number if you'd like to see it. That's what I have to say. Yeah.
For the leaders, regarding the meeting tomorrow, do you believe that there is an increased motivation to start early and put the groundwork in before, things get out of hand?
Well, this team has always been quite motivated to delivering a budget on time. We were motivated in doing so last year, but delivering a budget on time and delivering the right product have to go hand in hand. And so we certainly want to avoid a protracted impasse as we saw last year. As I've said before, for me, professionally and personally, it wasn't fun. We didn't look to have an impasse just to have an impasse, and we realized there were a lot of negative consequences to it. But if we had not held the line the way we did, some of the achievements that we had as it relates to permitting reform and certainly protecting every consumer of electricity in this Commonwealth from the electricity tax of Reggie would not have occurred had we gotten the budget done on June 30th. So we're committed to getting this budget done on time, but it has to be done responsibly.
There's a new wrinkle to an old argument, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. The way the governor is framing it, it could save the Commonwealth $300 million a year on entitlement programs like Medicaid because it would bring up the actual amount that people made in the year. What do you say to that?
We keep talking about maximum wage jobs, and that's where this whole conversation that our friends on the other side of the aisle have is quite misplaced. Because quite frankly, if an individual's making $7.25 an hour or $15 an hour, they're not going to be able to effectuate the American dream. They're not going to be able to buy a home. They're not going to be able to afford their electricity bills. And that's why we have continually been focused on pro-growth economic policies that bring all wages up to maximum wages. It's like his conversation about career and technical education. Leader Topper can talk about that. That's been something we've championed for many, many years, and we've championed it because we know it leads to family-sustaining wages. We're willing to have a conversation about minimum wage and to see if we can come to a compromise. But based on the way the governor delivered that message, I think he's more interested in the political talking point than actually getting something done on the issue.
But would you eliminate the talking point if it just raised and it put in effect the things you're talking about?
Oh, there'll always be a talking point, right? What is the base? I mean, he even mentioned West Virginia at $10 an hour, but he certainly didn't propose $10 an hour. We believe, once again, that you have to have the market be able to affect what the wages are, and we've said that. That being said, as Leader Pittman said, it's all part of a budget negotiation. This is where the negotiation starts, and I think it's important for everybody back in our communities, back home, school districts, county agencies, to understand that the product that was touted today is a proposal. Don't book any of those funds. Don't talk about any of those policies. They're not done yet. It is not law yet. That's our job, and we plan to get to it.
What's an appropriate amount of money to spend on public schools? The governor's talking about another $500 million.
The appropriate money is when you can see it being effective. Now, the governor said two things today. First, he talked about the amount of money, but then he also addressed the fact that because of the demographic challenges, our schools are seeing less students. So where is that effective point? We believe that it's not just money that makes schools effective. We believe that parental choice in a student's education is what makes education effective. We believe ensuring there are strong and robust career and technical education programs are what make schools effective. So it's not just about the amount of money. That is what the other side would have you believe. We believe that there's a lot of policy, similar to the literacy initiatives that we were able to get in last budget, that will actually help to turn our results around. And that has to go hand in hand with any amount of money.
Two more questions. I think you had a...
That was my question as well, actually. Can you give us an update on cannabis, skills games, the closing of the net income loophole, any of the revenue generators that the governor proposed?
We've continually talked about gaming reform as a five-party conversation. We still believe there is something that needs to occur on gaming reform. As we all know, the Supreme Court has heard arguments on this. We think it would be extraordinarily helpful if the Supreme Court would deliver an opinion that has clarity and deliver that opinion sooner than later. But I will tell you, I would also like to see the governor's words on paper. Keep in mind, when the House Democrats passed recreational marijuana last year, and they came up with that crazy plan to have the state stores implement it, we heard nothing from the governor on whether or not he'd even sign the bill, as an example. The governor talks about gaming reform, but we have yet to see a legislative proposal put in front of us. Again, applause lines and speeches don't deliver action. Words on paper deliver action. I think last question.
Yeah, I guess I was just interested in if you folks as leaders could comment on the data center principles for development of data centers that the governor introduced in his address today. Do you feel like those things are needed at the state level? And what do you feel about?
Here, generally, as it relates to data centers, keep in mind that affordability and availability of electricity go hand in hand. The reason why electricity is increasingly unaffordable is because it's decreasingly available. And it's because some of the crazy policies that we've had, not just in this state, but other states. As Leader Topper said, for 6 years we wasted time on Reggie. The governor inherited Reggie from his predecessor, and for some reason he chose to give it a big old hug until he realized the cost of electricity was going to go through the roof, and then he dropped it like a hot potato. So we're going to have a conversation about data centers, not only how we handle local communities, not only how they pay their fair share, but the conversation has to be rooted in the fundamentals that affordability and availability of electricity go hand in hand. The notion that data centers should bring their own supply to the market seems to make a lot of sense. So, anything else?
Can the administration require that, though, currently under law?
I don't think they can, otherwise he wouldn't be asking us for it. Thank you all very much.